right, now joining us now to break down this and so much more is former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Sean, I've got to ask you about the latest news out of this shooting and the fallout from it. The Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General has opened an investigation. Do you think that we're going to get the truth about what happened here and why there was such an obvious security failing?
I think we'll get an excuse and a lot of finger pointing. I'm not sure that we'll get the truth. And those are two very different things. Washington is very good at blame and finger pointing. My guess is that you see this report come out. The people that I'm talking to at very, very high levels, James, are saying that they're going to blame the local law enforcement and say that it was their responsibility to cover this particular building and the roof. I just, at the end of the day, I don't think people are going to buy that because the Secret Service has an overarching responsibility for protection.
Yeah, and I mean, Sean, you've traveled with the Secret Service and with the president. In a previous life, I've traveled with previous presidents as a member of the press corps. And I see how the Secret Service operates. They're very, very professional and very, very thorough. And it seems to me that these new reports now that apparently the rifle was somehow secreted away in that building before the event, this all raises more and more questions than it does answers.
Oh, yeah, you're putting it exactly right. Every day that goes by, there's another piece of information that comes out that makes you go, this just doesn't add up, right? So this guy comes out today. We're talking about the phone, that he's got all these other targets. I mean, I'm sorry, what 20-year-old that has this kind of background has no digital footprint whatsoever? I mean, it's like he's on some because he's on this one app that they're apparently saying maybe now they're not. It's confusing. But that he has no digital footprint that leads him to believe that he had a political vengeance, a motive, a concern, some kind of mental illness. And yet all the other stuff doesn't add up, right? There's just more questions. And the funny part about this, James, I don't understand the Secret Service, the head of the Secret Service you mentioned, her, Kimberly Cheadle. She shows up at the Republican National Convention, and she doesn't think this is going to be topic number one where all these delegates and members of Congress are. They have a press conference right after the shooting. They don't acknowledge anything to do with the shooting. Then this director herself shows up and doesn't think that that's going to be topic du jour.
It's just unbelievable, Sean. But, the other thing that came out of this, of course, was that amazing photograph of Donald Trump holding his fist up. You've got the flag in the background. One of the things that's coming out now, and Axios is reporting that some photographers and photo editors are now saying, we don't want to use the pic. We don't want to show that picture. We don't think people will be showing that picture anymore because it helps Trump. And I just think this is absolutely amazing that you have elements of the media that are now willing to forego an iconic news image because of politics. What's your reaction to that?
You want to see my shocked face?
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, honestly, just let's be clear. CNN's headline was Trump falls down after a loud bang. USA Today was pops heard at event. What New York Times said, someone in the background goes pop, pop, pop at Trump rally. There was another headline that says gunman killed at Trump rally. I mean, look, if you think that's what's going to shock me, you're nuts. This media has been lying and against President Trump and the conservative movement for a long, long time. It's sad, it's pathetic, but it's not surprising.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm expecting New York District Attorney to indict Trump for avoiding an assassination attempt. But let's move on here to some of the polls that we're seeing around the joint. Recent polling is showing Trump leading in every battleground state, ticking up slightly in the days over the last week. Particularly, it showed Trump leading Biden in Virginia, 45-43. I find it extraordinary that Virginia is in play here. What's going on?
What's going on is that as the election comes into focus, more people from one side of the United States to the other are looking at the Biden record and contrasting it to the Trump record and saying, I'll take that over that any day of the week. I mean, whether it's interest rates, inflation, foreign policy, the border, jobs, everything was better under Trump. And I think the more people focus on the election, the choice is becoming clearer and clearer. You're going to have the hardcore people on both sides, no question about it. But you look at a state like Virginia that hasn't voted Republican presidentially since 2004. You look at New Hampshire, Minnesota, even California, which I don't think will win, but it's tied. New York within single digits, Rhode Island single digits. James, the one thing that scares me, and I'm telling you, reports are coming out right now in the United States saying that over the weekend that Biden will step down. Unfortunately, I believe these reports, and I have been very reluctant to think that Joe Biden was going to give this up. I believe that COVID gave him an off-ramp, and he's taking it. But I'm telling you, mark my words, I think Republicans better be careful what they wished for. It is a very different race no matter who it is. Do I think we can win? Absolutely. But just understand that the game changes. It's inserting one team for another team, and you have to change your strategy to win. And I'm just saying, I think Republicans better be very careful about understanding what's about to happen.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I just saw some footage of Kamala Harris speaking in North Carolina. She seems very pumped up and ready to go. What about how she would play? You've got this female candidate, minority female candidate. How would she play in some of these suburban kind of areas that are big battlegrounds and, you know, which was already going to be a big fight between the immigration issue and the abortion issue? Would Kamala Harris activate a female vote, which is already tilting the Democrat way, into bigger numbers?
You're asking the right question, right? Let's say she teams up with a Gretchen Whitmer or potentially a Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. I don't know. That's the point, and that's why you're asking the right question. These X factors. Does she fire up black women? Does she fire up women in general? I don't think so, but I will tell you this. For all of us, people like me and you, the people who watch your show, we're in tune. We're following the bouncing ball politically as it goes from one side to another. But there's a lot of Americans that really don't know much about her because they don't know much about most vice presidents. That's normal in American politics. And so a few $100 million of ad spending by Hollywood liberals might be able to make some differences on the edge. I think they'll be more unified if Joe steps down. But the bottom line is this: I don't like change. I'm a 50-year-old white guy that's just, and so I would argue, we, get off my lawn. I know what we've got with Joe Biden, and I would rather stick with that than any X factor right now. Do I think we can beat Kamala Harris? Absolutely. Is she going to own the border and its results? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, Biden stepping aside provides an opportunity for the Democrats to say, okay, guys, we wanted him to step aside. We owe it to him now to rally around Kamala Harris. We may not like her. We may not think she's great, but we owe it to her to rally around her and to get re-energized. I'm just telling you, will we win? Yes, but it's a different game than we have been playing so far.
So how much then does, we saw that speech by J.D. Vance, for example, which set out a very, very clear kind of mandate about what the Republicans are about. How much of that creates a positive messaging that the Republicans might need, because they won't have the Sleepy Joe thing? They can't go if Kamala runs or if somebody else comes up, through the convention. They're not able to say, this guy's out of it. They've got to have something more positive, don't they?
Yeah, look, I think J.D. Vance has got an amazing story. I was literally bumped into some guy a couple hours ago shopping, and he knew, my background, and he said, man, that J.D. Vance, what a story, right? Pulled himself out of from his bootstraps up, used the GI Bill to go to college after serving in the Marine Corps, went to Ohio State, went on to business and became very successful. That's the American dream. He's lived it. He doesn't have to talk about it and talk about policies that work. He's lived it. He is the exemplification of the American dream. It's a great story, and it's a great way to articulate a vision and how policies affect people. But you're absolutely right. We've been able to play the Joe Biden isn't up for it, Joe Biden's out of it. That's what the focus is. You're going to have to change the trajectory of the race, the attacks of the race, the contrast. Everything changes. And I don't think vice presidents matter that much anyway. But if Kamala were to become the nominee, suddenly who she puts on the ticket and that dynamic changes. Because remember, we've already talked about, from a Republican standpoint, J.D. Vance parking himself in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. They picked one of the governors there. That's a big deal for them.
Absolutely. Sean Spicer, from one 50-year-old white guy to another, thanks so much for your time.